Hi, everybody. This is Bloody Essentials. I'm Nina,
And I'm Jamie.
and we are discussing Hausu or House from 1977.
I'm so excited about this one. I'm really just excited that you are willing to discuss this movie. I feel like it's not for everybody. It's one where I have to know somebody a little bit to recommend it to them. And I'm just glad that you're down.
Oh, I love this movie so much. I'm so
Aw.
down. Yeah, the first time I watched this movie, I had no clue what it was about. I didn't even know it was a horror movie, and I just started watching it. I'm like, this is incredible. Why does nobody talk about this? So,
I mean, like,
wait,
there's nothing like it.
no, nothing like it. And it's really a shame no one talks about it, I don't understand, but when you suggested this and you said that this is one you really wanted to talk about, I was like, we're doing this one first."
I know, yay. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's because it's like, a foreign film. I don't know if it's because, it's kind of like nonlinear like storytelling because it's
Mhm.
like super psychedelic and the effects and the way that it's put together are really kind of like wild and bonkers. I'm not sure if that's why, but it's like more people need to talk about it. It's beloved among the people who love it, I think, but
Mhm.
it's not a taste for everybody, I guess, but I think everybody should see it at least once.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and, the story of how it got made is just as interesting as, what they ended up making, so it's really fun.
I know. The story behind this movie, lots of little stories behind this movie are really kind of like bizarre and unusual. I'm assuming you're talking about that this was like an answer to Jaws, kind of.
Yes. This is we'll get into it, but yes, we'll definitely get into it. I'm so excited, and I'm just bear with us. We'll save interesting facts for the end because we don't want to
Yes,
distract you from the glory that is Hausu.
exactly. So I'll get into some plot points for us. Before I get into that, I will say that like there is like a basic plot. It's this girl brings her friends from school to her auntie's house, and it turns out to be kind of haunted and kind of deadly. So we have kind of like a main plot there, but again, this is kind of like nonlinear storytelling. It's kind of experimental. So like almost saying that it has like a plot to follow is like not 100% accurate. I feel like it's so much more than like a plotted movie. That being said, we kick off with this gal. Her name is Gorgeous, and she's like really excited because her dad's coming back home. It's spring break. They're gonna go to the like vacation home for the summer, but it turns out that those plans are dashed because daddy comes home with a brand new mom since Gorgeous's mom passed away 8 years ago. So obviously, that plan isn't going to work out because she is not happy with that plan.
It's a common theme, the child is not happy with the new choice of the spouse, the replacement, if you will. It's really funny because the dad's like, "We can still go, but we're bringing someone with us.
I
Be
know.
excited."
I know, and, like, there's so much, like, drama to that whole scene because, like, so the new mom comes in and she's got this white scarf and this white, like, chiffon, and it's like the wind is, like, blowing her
The
chiffon,
sound
and
effects.
yeah, there's, like, seagulls at one point, so I
Yeah.
literally wrote down, like, the drama, the goals, so,
Right.
like, just like the whole way that thing is put together is really really fun. And I had to note a couple of little things in there. The montage of the photos is like so hilarious because she's going through this like all these photos and stuff of her and her
Of her
dad,
parents,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, her parents. And there's like one picture in particular, and it's like them
Is
like
it the
both.
one where she cuts her dad's face out or draws over his face or something?
That is one of them, but my favorite one, there's a photo in the bunch that pops up on screen, and it's literally like her and her dad like eating a breadstick. and they're like eating it from each of them from one end.
Lady and the Tramp, yeah.
Hilarious, like, just so freaking funny, and, I also had to mention there's a line that one of her friends says to her in the beginning that I thought was amazing. She says something like, "Why are you looking at me?" And she says, "'Cause you looked like a witch in a horror movie." And first of all,
Yeah.
that's an amazing compliment, and second of all, maybe a little bit of foreshadowing there? Hmm?
Mhm. Oop.
I also wanted to mention, just like some of the kaleidoscope kind of effects in this movie, like right off the bat. There's like a
Oh my
moment,
god.
yeah, there's like this very kaleidoscopy kind of sequence. That's the best way that I can describe it is
It's
kaleidoscopy.
but it's like kaleidoscope in reverse because the
Yeah.
outside stays the same and the inside is like a moving picture, and it's just so beautiful. I've never seen anybody tell a story like that before where it wasn't like animation, you know?
Oh,
It's like the colors of the background are just they stay, and then the motion happens in the center, and it's just it's so beautiful. It's such a great way to tell a story.
I know. And it's so like, it's just, it's unusual, and like you kind of can't keep your eyes off of it. So
Yeah.
I freaking love that. So next I always like kind of like our meet the characters moment. So I think we have this kind of like meet the girls when they kind of decide, you know what, let's like merge our spring breaks, okay? You don't want to go do spring break with your new mom or whatever. And she's like, we should all go to my auntie's house. But anyway, let's get into the girls for a minute. We have Kung Fu, we have Sweet, we have Melody, we have Prop, we have Mac, and we have Fantasy. And I love how they're all the girls are named for like their attributes.
Mac is not named after Big Mac. She is named because of Stomach Mac, stomach, because she likes to eat. And what is sweet from do you remember? Because
I
I
think
always mix them up because they show them both eating in the beginning.
yeah, so Sweet is the one, we'll get into this, but Sweet's the one who gets destroyed by mattresses and likes to clean.
That's what it is. She likes to clean. So she's
Yeah.
sweet because she's gracious and is generous and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Do you have a favorite, by the way?
oh yeah,
Who's your fave?
absolutely. It's fantasy.
Why? I love fantasy too, and I'll tell you mine, but why fantasy?
I have lots of reasons, but I think of she's the closest to gorgeous.
Totally.
So her demise means the most, I think. She's got the most to lose. Like they're all
Mhm.
friends, but like they are like specifically very tight and they
Oh,
make that
yeah.
clear right away. And I think that like I said, the choices she makes throughout this story are they really they set her apart from everybody else. And I think, because of her relationship with Gorgeous and how she chooses to makes the choice on her own terms in the end, and I love that.
Yeah. I
So,
love that too.
who's your favorite?
Okay, so like I love her. I freaking love Kung Fu so
Who's
much.
my second? Yeah.
Talk about an underappreciated, not so final girl, okay? Like she is a badass. Like she takes leadership. She says some
Mhm.
really funny stuff along the way too. She's really gorgeous. And her death is amazing. We'll get into it, but seriously, she's like nobody ever talks about her. And I'm
Yeah.
like, she's like a totally amazing, not so final girl. I mean, she's kicking ass and like chonies, you know what I mean? Like, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. Like, I freaking love her, but we'll get into some more about like the girls as we move on. But anyway, so they make this decision to all go to Gorgeous's auntie's house. She writes her auntie a letter, and her auntie, of course, is like excited to have her. So
And, she has not seen her aunt sh since she was a very young girl. So,
yeah,
like, when her mom was still alive, they visited, so it's been a while.
so yeah, she hasn't seen her auntie in a really long time. So let's talk about like their journey, this epic journey to auntie's house for a minute. Because they're off, to auntie, and like first they take this train ride. Can we talk about the train ride a little bit?
Animation, the background is animated. Oh
Uh
my god.
It's amazing. This movie in general is kind of like if you took like the Yellow Submarine animated movie, the Beatles movie,
Yes.
and you
Yes.
mix that with like Evil Dead, and then like you threw
Yes.
in a bunch of other horror stuff, that's kind of what you would get. But it's very like Yellow Submarine,
Very
and I love it.
campy too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I really like where so Gorgeous is explaining to the girls like about her family's history, about her auntie, what I love is that it's almost like they're watching it like a movie.
Home video, yes.
Yes,
It's like
because
you
you get
see
like
their
the
silhouettes
film.
or whatever a little, yeah.
Ah, and they're treating it like they're commenting on a movie, which is like so
Yes.
much fun because they're talking throughout it as she's explaining, almost like they're watching it, like you would talk about a
Right
movie
there
with your
with you.
friends.
Exactly. It's like they put these actresses in a room and they're like, "Be your characters, but describe what you're seeing, and
Oh,
just tell the story," and this is I've never seen storytelling like this, like, this movie is so ahead of its time, like, it's basically a flashback of telling the aunt story and why she lives alone in this remote village, and, basically, like, her mom got married and left, but her aunt was engaged, and the fiancé died in World War II
yeah,
and never came back even though he promised he would. So
yeah.
she's been left in this village all by herself, waiting for him.
We'll get into Auntie. I love her like so
Mhm.
much. She's such a badass. I also just have to say the fashion in this movie is as psychedelic and fun as like the backgrounds and everything else. Everybody's train outfits are amazing.
The schoolgirl uniforms, the
I
Japanese schoolgirl
know.
uniforms, they're so freaking cute.
Yeah, I wanna wear it, like, everywhere.
Yes,
It's
yes.
amazing. But Mac in particular is wearing, like, this, like, orange kind of, like, plaid, like, jumpsuit, but
It's
it's
like a
shorts.
romper,
It's like a
yeah.
romper, thank you, and it is so freaking cute. Like, I love Mac. I think she's, like, super all the girls are really adorable, but I loved her outfit the most.
I did note that, I liked her little knee-high socks too, and Melody has these cute little red bell bottoms that are so amazing, like, so 70s, I love it so much.
My favorite era of clothing, so, like, I love the looks in
Same,
this movie, like, so
yes.
freaking much.
All
And,
the
you
bright
know,
colors and patterns.
I know, and we didn't even get into this yet, but let's talk about Blanche the cat for a minute because part
So,
of Gorgeous, bringing her friends on this trek involves Blanche, this white cat, showing up at her house. I love me some cats of horror, and this one's a really good one.
this is a great one. This cat mysteriously shows up, shortly after she finds out that her dad has a new fiancé, and she's looking at all of the pictures.
Yep.
So, just before she decides to, send a letter to auntie, so,
Yeah. Okay. So they get to the house. And it's a trek to get there too. I mean, they have to like do a lot of walking and it seems kind of like a treacherous little trip to get there, by the
Planes,
way.
trains, and automobiles. They're taking a train, they're riding a bus. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite the trek.
Yeah, it's pretty remote out there. Okay.
Yeah.
So they get there, to find Auntie. She's this badass baller lady with a short gray bob and a wheelchair. And she's there and she's like been waiting for her this whole time, right? And the group of girls is basically like, hey, you're cool, Auntie. Thanks for having us. We're gonna clean this house for you and we're gonna cook for you. And so that's kind of how they meet Auntie.
Yeah. It's very clear that she doesn't cook, she doesn't clean, she doesn't get around very well, so she's gonna need extra help.
And she's like all too delighted to have a group of young,
Mhm.
healthy, girls there at the house to help her out. Like, we're getting red flags kind of like left and right in the best ways.
Yes.
And I have to say, like, when they first come into the house, we kind of first see this moment of Blanche's eyes glowing green. And we know that
Mhm.
that's going to mean trouble throughout this
Mhm.
movie. Okay. And then we have that like crazy chandelier fight with Kung Fu. So the chandelier comes down, and there's these pieces that come down out of it, and Kung Fu is just like on it and jumps in the air and is like fighting this like chandelier as it's falling down. A piece of it lands and like kills a lizard, like the cat eats the
Yeah.
lizard. It's bonkers, y'all, but it was like so cool how they put it all together.
There is a moment, where Auntie is kind of eyeing the girls a little bit and just checking them out, and she's looking Mac up and down, and she's like, "Ooh, you're tasty."
I know, and that's when we as the audience are like, "Oh, okay, she's definitely gonna feed on their young souls in some way, or maybe
Oh,
just
yeah.
eat them."
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, then we have Mac shortly after goes missing. She's excited about her big watermelon, as anybody would be, goes out to get it from the well. We don't see what happens to her, but she's missing, and the others begin to search for her.
Something I wanted to note, there's a scene where Auntie is asked why she wears dark glasses in the sunlight or whatever, and she says that the bright light hurts her eyes. I did some digging. Apparently, this is a reference to nuclear bombs. Apparently, the director was a survivor of Hiroshima.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wild.
there's little nuances in here every so often where he makes a reference to um, the devastation in Japan. So,
Wow.
yeah, Auntie mentions how the village used to be very prosperous and full
I
of
remember.
people, and it's not so much anymore. So, she says basically ever since the war, it's not been the same. So there's little
Wow.
things here and there that are scattered. If you look for them, they're there. So I just want to point that out.
So cool. And so I'm just gonna hop into when I think it's fantasy. Yeah, it's fantasy who goes out to the well, right? And
Yeah,
she pulls up she pulls up the watermelon, but it ends up being Mac's head. And Mac's head like flies up and like bites her right on the ass, and it's amazing.
so much fun.
It's seriously so cool. You just don't see stuff like that like all the time. And the head like spits blood. Like it's
Yeah,
really great. Like the effect is wonderful. And then, after that happens, Auntie can like walk all of a sudden, and she's like just on top of the world, like feeling really, really good.
yeah. And the girls are like, it's fine.
Yeah.
She's rested, and the girls They go see they go to see if the watermelon's still there for some reason because 'cause they're like, "Oh, she went to go get the watermelon," so they check it, and the watermelon is there. The head is
Yeah.
missing.
So it's like everybody's like, "Oh, fantasy. You and your fantastical mind and your imagination. Like you were just seeing stuff. Like it's fine. Like Auntie's just feeling good. Mac is probably just checking out that potato field because, she
She likes
loves
to eat.
potatoes."
It's like, but would she leave? Is her love of potatoes so great that she would leave without seeing if anybody wants to join her in this place she's never been?
Also, she had watermelon waiting for her, and she was really excited about it. I mean, she wouldn't stick her. You know she'd be sticking around for that. They literally eat the watermelon and are like, "Oh, save a piece for Mac." Haha. But I'm sure she's fine.
Yeah. They're
Girls,
really
come on.
concerned.
I know.
Poor Mac.
Um, I know. I love the scene too when they're eating, and it's almost like Auntie is fucking with fantasy because like
Yeah,
she can
the
tell that
eyeball.
yes, when Auntie has that eyeball in her mouth and it moves around and fantasy is looking, she's like the only one who notices too because
Yes.
Auntie's totally messing with her because Auntie knows that like she's the only one who's kind of like started to see that something is not quite right or safe for them. So I love that she kind of taunts her in that moment.
And it's such a great scene. I really wanna know how they did that, but it's so creepy.
Ah, such a good eyeball. Um, and at this point too, like everybody's kind of like gets into their own little things here. I mean, we have Sweet who's like goes off, she's cleaning, and then she sees this scary doll like hanging in the air. And
Mhm.
then we have this moment where like Kung Fu is like slicing wood, and then the wood like She has to fight the wood. It's on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then for plot point, I just said, "Yep, shit's weird. Shit's definitely weird."
Yeah, one girl's in a bathtub and, like, I don't know if you caught it, but the hair, like, goes up her back, and it's so like, very Ring-esque before
Yes.
Ring, yeah, but it's so creepy, and then I love the scene where Auntie's in the kitchen with the girls, and she walks into the fridge closes behind her, and she appears on a beam in the ceiling and, like, looks at the camera and just winks, while the
I
girls are like,
know.
"Did you see? She just went into the fridge." They open it and she's gone.
And yet again, like fantasy has this moment where not everybody believes her, not everybody saw. And then like it's like Auntie is like taunting us as the audience too, because
Mhm.
we saw, fantasy saw, but not other people. So it's like we're like on team fantasy, like being like, dude, no, she's like jump. And then it turns into a whole dance sequence. And I love dances of horror. Like she dances with the skeleton a little bit, and I'm like,
Yes. The skeleton's dancing in the background while Melody plays the piano.
I love the skeleton because we have a loose little like reference to the fact that like down in the room where she teaches or used to teach piano lessons, that's where like Gorgeous's grandfather did like medical practices of some
Yeah, and
kind.
he
Like,
had a skeleton in his office or whatever, yeah.
yeah, so that's where the skeleton comes from. Okay, and then while she's doing her dance too, she's also like eating a hand, which I'm assuming is Mac's hand.
Yeah.
And then we have this crazy like sequence with the piano and the cat like jumping, and then it goes backwards, and then meowing is put in with the music, and it's wild,
Mhm.
and I love it.
So much fun.
Um, let's see. Okay, and then we have this like cool. I'm just gonna go into this cool lipstick moment because I love a lipstick moment where like a woman puts on a lipstick in a horror movie and like transforms or becomes someone else or whatever. And that's Gorgeous's moment where she's looking in that mirror.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I think you know what I'm gonna ask. After this scene, things get a little weird with Gorgeous. Do we think that she's just possessed after this point, or do we think something else happened?
I kind of took it as a possession. To me, it looks like a possession. And then, kind of what we
Mhm.
have happen at the end makes me think it's a possession too. But I think it's a possession. She's looking in the
Okay.
mirror. She puts on this lipstick. She sees Auntie. Shit happens in the mirror. It's bleeding. It's cracked and all that stuff. And then she, like, her body, like, turns to flames, kind of. But
Yeah.
I think she was possessed. What do you think?
See, I don't know. I personally think that it could go either way, honestly. I'm not 100% sure because, you don't see anything really. You see her on fire, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
I
That could just be a
know.
transformation because fire technically sometimes is
Yeah,
like a phoenix rising from the ashes type thing. So, who
totally.
knows? But I see a lot of people say that they think that Gorgeous died here and you just see her ghost the rest of the time. But I personally I think ghosts require more energy than what Gorgeous like, she's appearing to everybody at this point, you know?
Totally.
So, I think you're right, I think it's more possession, I think, she sees her mom, she's thinking about her mom, she's very vulnerable and, susceptible to things coming in, so, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question though, because I mean, honestly, like, when like first watching this movie and even watching it now, because I love witches so much, there's so much witchy stuff that happens, right?
Yeah,
Where I was almost like, it's almost like less of like ghost haunting kind of aspects as it is like witch aspects.
it's okay.
Possession was my first thought, but then you think about it where it's like, well, we find out that she's in the realm of her aunt, which is the realm of the dead. So it's like, was she alive that whole time and just possessed, or was she dead? I still think possession because, like, just thinking of her personality,
Mhm.
she wasn't quite herself, like at the end. And if she was a spirit, I think she'd be a little bit more like the Gorgeous we knew before that. Even though
Mhm.
Gorgeous is kind of at a crossroad, she's at a kind of weird point in her life, but possession, I
Well, and
think.
Another question, do you think Auntie is alive or do you think she's possessed?
I know, that's a good question too. At first, I would have like, yeah, just thought she was like a witch, like harnessing
Mhm.
power, but
Yeah.
she's more like a ghost, but she's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure
Yeah,
about
it's
Auntie.
very strange. I personally think Auntie is a ghost just because she comes and goes. Like, she might have been somewhat human to start with, but I think that, I don't know, like, it's very hard to distinguish reality from fantasy and, separate the 2 worlds. I don't think there's a definitive answer.
No, I actually
Yeah,
don't think there's a right or wrong answer, and I don't think
yeah,
that yeah, I mean, I think it could be either either
yeah,
way. Again, that's kind
yeah.
of the beauty of this movie is it doesn't really answer all the questions. It doesn't necessarily need to because there isn't really an answer.
And the more you try to define it, the more you try to make explanations, the less it makes sense, so,
Totally. Yeah.
yep.
Okay, so then we get another kill. I think, we get Sweet, who's like smashed by these mattresses, which
Yeah,
is amazing.
yes, it's such a fun death.
And it's kind of fun because, they're like at points they're like shooting up at her. She's like on top of a glass. So you see her from like underneath, and then these mattresses falling on top of her and everything. And I love that everybody's kind of like death or whatever is tied to like who they are and what their personality is too. So Sweet was
Mhm.
like cleaning and she gets killed by like a bunch of mattresses. And she's sweet, so it's like dreamy. Okay. So next plot point. I just said G is like possessed. House won't let the girls out. I like one moment where somebody says, it's like an occult movie. And then, of course, Kung Fu says, no, a karate movie. And then she tries to karate chop the doors down, but that won't work. The house has definitely got them stuck.
I do think it's interesting the girls are like, "Let's call our teacher, Mr. Togo, or whatever, to save us," and, Gorgeous has this image of Mr. Togo. I think it's Togo, right?
Yeah,
Togo? I can't remember.
I think it's
Um,
Togo.
yeah, but he's, like, in this knight's armor, and he's coming to rescue her, and it's such a girl's fantasy, because I think they all secretly think he's dreaming or whatever, so they're just obsessed. They have a little crush on him, but it's so funny, the typical little girl ideal of, having a guy come save her or whatever from the danger.
I know. He's funny too. He's kind of like a little bit of comic relief through this movie. I mean, he falls
Then
down
you
the
Oh
falls
my
down the
god,
stairs.
the
The
bucket
bucket's on
getting
his
stuck
butt.
on his butt.
Like this movie has such a like acidy sense of humor and I love it. It's hilarious. But so like this movie has so many things. It's horror and it's like really abstract, but it's also like comedy as well.
It's fun. There's that that bucket scene always gets me. It's just like Benny Hill. If you threw on Benny Hill music in the background, like da 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 da, like
Yeah.
it would just fit right in. So great.
It's seriously amazing. But let's just jump right into the best kill of the movie in my opinion. I don't know if that's how you feel too. I'm assuming maybe yes because it's just
Oh
so
yeah.
amazing. Let's talk about Melody's kill, okay? How many times do you get to see a girl eaten by a piano?
And in such a fun way. Like the keys of the piano start to change colors and oh, it's so great.
I love when she first is like getting attacked because then she like pulls her hands up and like they're all her fingers are like gone and she's bleeding and stuff. And then it just gets like maniacal and like crazy because she's like in the piano with the strings and her arms are like there and then she's getting like pulled into it. She says at one point like giggling as she's getting like devoured by
Mhm.
this piano naughty or whatever.
It's
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 like
like an uncomfortable kind of laughter, like she's just
I
in
know.
shock.
I
Yeah.
know. And then, like, to make it even better, who is watching? Is it Fantasy who's watching? I think as this is happening, 'cause of course, because poor Fantasy
Of
sees
course.
all the horror unfold, like, more than
Yeah,
anybody else. So
because
she's
they
watching.
separated to look for somebody, yeah.
Yeah, they separated to look, and, so Fantasy is watching this whole thing go down, and she's got this, like, fishbowl on the table next to her, and then Melody's, like, whole arm flies off into the fishbowl, and that all knocks down, and poor Fantasy is, like, on the ground now. Poor Fantasy, man.
And then you see, just Melody's fingers playing the piano, and, like, the rest of Melody is gone.
Just gone. And there's little, like, blood stains on the keys, and it's amazing. Like, I yeah, I can't think of any other I can't think of any other piano deaths off the top of my head other than, like, Looney Tunes style, like, somebody getting a piano dropped on them. I can't think of any other piano kills.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I
There's,
know.
piano weapons that are used, like with Audition, the piano
It's true.
wire,
That's
but we don't have
true.
an actual piano.
It's true. And it's an amazing thing. Okay. So then I kind of like the next point I have is, we have like our group of girls are kind of reunited. We have Prof is still left, Fantasy and Kung Fu. I think that's
Yes.
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so then there's like a giant version of like Gorgeous's head. It's coming out of like the
Uh-huh.
wall or the TV or something. And she's basically explaining to them, that she is now in Auntie's world, which is like kind of like a ghost world, and that
Mhm.
Auntie eats any unmarried girls. And then
Yeah.
that allows her to wear the like bridal robe. So Auntie like
Yeah.
feeds off of unmarried girls, and then
Right.
everything just goes kinda nuts, like, things are spinning and flying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really funny, just before this, there's a moment where Prof is like, "It's unscientific, unreasonable, unbelievable," and I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly how you're feeling right now." Okay.
That sums it up pretty
And
nicely, Prof.
yeah, and then there's the clock dripping blood. So beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and again, it's unlike anything that I've ever really seen before. It's, sweet, and she's in the
Mhm.
clock, and there's, like, stuff dripping down it, like blood and then other colors, and there's, like, something
Yeah.
so sad. She seems, like, really, like, trapped in, like, I guess, like, the end of her
The other
time.
world, yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and like Kung Fu sees her, and I think Prof sees her, maybe Fantasy
Yeah.
sees her, and it's like a really kind of like tragic moment.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause you don't see how she dies, you just see her in the clock already, so it's like she's already been taken, and
yeah,
this is her, like, telling them, like, I'm no longer with you."
yeah, I'm gone. So that was rough.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we have, everything's kind of going crazy in there with the house. And I really love when, Kung Fu, again, just being the badass that Kung Fu is, she's like fighting for them. Well, first she goes to the phone, and then like the phone wraps around her neck, but she like vanquishes that because she's a badass. And then, she gets the lamp to her head, and she's still moving around. Her lower half is like moving around like crazy. She's getting zapped and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and like I love that even okay, I have to like talk about this scene because I think it's so beautiful and cool. Like Kung Fu almost like she's in like she can see like these parts of like her other friends. Like I think she sees Mac's
Mhm.
head, and she sees like their
Yeah.
legs and their arms. And I think it's really cool that even though she's like dying, her lower half still comes out and like kicks the cat painting,
Yeah.
and she's still trying to save the day. It's so cool.
It is she goes down fighting, and I love how she goes straight to the phone. She's like, "Well, Gorgeous said it wasn't working, but Gorgeous is fucking nuts, so I'm doing it
Yeah.
anyway. So I'm going to double check." Like, that's so smart, but unfortunately, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, but I love that she still like went down a hero. I really like how it looks when like her head is kind of in like the ghost world because it's like that
Yeah.
blue background with all the faces and it looks
Yeah.
like a painting. It's
Mhm.
really, 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 really cool. Just super, super unique.
It looks
Um,
like all of the girls basically that Auntie has ever eaten are just in
yeah.
this painting, and it's so striking, it's so beautiful.
It's so eerie and like cool and yeah, childlike and scary in that sense, but amazing.
Mhm.
So then we have like, the whole room is just like filling up with blood. We have this blood like river, and we have Prof and Fantasy. And I love that Prof's glasses. She loses her
Mhm.
glasses,
Of course, right?
of course, and tries to retrieve them because she's Prof, and her thing is like, science and figuring things out. So she's like,
Logic.
yeah, and so again, like here's another character like dying by their traits or whatever because she goes for
Mhm.
her glasses because she wants to figure out and read the book and know what's going on. And then we have this great
Mhm.
scene of her in the blood, naked,
Yeah.
but it was really cool looking. And then like, man, I don't even know what to make of like I don't even know what to make of the what happens next, exactly.
So, basically, it's just gorgeous and fantasy now,
Yep,
and, I think it's more of Auntie's spirit within Gorgeous, obviously,
same.
because if it was really gorgeous, Gorgeous wouldn't want to hurt Fantasy.
I know, because 'cause they're
Um,
tight.
yeah, but basically, Gorgeous appears as what I can only describe as, like, a reference to a mother type figure because she's got one breast exposed, the rest of
Yep,
her is covered. She's got um she just sits down on these stairs, and Fantasy basically just surrenders to her, and,
yep,
Gorgeous wraps her arms around her. It's interesting that Gorgeous appears as a mother type figure because the whole time this is what Gorgeous is looking for
yep.
in Auntie. She wants a mother figure. She rejects the one that her dad tries to find for her, and she ultimately becomes exactly what she's looking for. I think it's
It's
interesting
beautiful.
Fantasy, who is the dreamer, they're always making fun of her because she's got her head in the clouds. She calls Gorgeous mother, and, I think it's kind of like she's just returning to, like, a more innocent time, She's just not
Mhm.
maybe not willing to accept that this is, like, Gorgeous with ill intent.
Totally.
So
Ugh,
she's just being completely vulnerable, and this is the easiest way to just end it.
yeah.
After she's witnessed all of her friends die, this is the easiest way.
Yeah, man, and
And
I
another reference to, the atrocities from Hiroshima and stuff, just
yeah,
you've seen all this violence, all this these awful things happen to the people you love, and she lays down her life.
yeah.
Yeah,
Ugh,
it's so sad.
beautifully said, Nina. Yeah, and, like, Fantasy is a really interesting character because you don't necessarily think she's gonna be the final
You don't think
girl,
she'll
but
be the final girl, yeah, and,
yeah,
also, suicide is a very significant thing in the culture of
yeah,
Japan.
very,
It's not a weak thing for them. It's a sign of strength, so,
totally. Yeah.
yeah.
Ah, really well put.
Mhm.
And then, we still have a little bit more here, because the new mom had said, dad, when they learned she was going to go to Auntie's house, like, new mom was like, I'll just go there by myself and I'll talk to her because it went so well with our first introduction. That sounds like a great idea.
This is
So
my first trial as a mother.
I know, and it's like, well, whatever happens to you, ma'am. Okay, so you go right ahead to the house. What I really love is like, because we didn't talk about it, but there's a point where Mr. Togo does try to get over to the girls, and the watermelon man is like asking him if he wants watermelons, and he's talking about bananas. And then when the new
Yeah,
mom shows up, there's Mr. Togo's like, I think car or maybe where Mr. Togo was, and it's just a pile of bananas. So I
yeah.
assume the man got turned into a pile of bananas. Is that how you took it?
There is a scene where he, is talking to the guy that sold them the watermelon at the beginning, and he asks him what his favorite fruit is or something, and he says bananas, and
Bananas.
then
Bananas.
he's what you are what you eat.
Yeah. And I just loved that. We see this like giant pile of bananas, and we're like, oh yeah, Mr. Togo was kind of like on his way to save the day, but bananas. So anyway, new mom arrives, and G's I call her G. I keep writing her as G for gorgeous. So
Oh, yeah.
gorge gorgeous brings her inside and opens up the doors to the house, and they're sitting there, and she starts to make these comments about like, oh, where about the other girls, being asleep, but when they wake up, they're gonna be hungry, which I really
Yeah,
liked.
they'll be hungry, alright.
Yeah, and then yeah, she has her glowing eye thing, like the cat did. Her eyes twinkle green, which we know is the danger zone, and then she burns new mom up.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Alright, so let's get into some fun facts here. I'm probably gonna butcher this name, but the director, I'm just gonna call him Obayashi?
That sounds
Abayashi?
right.
Yeah, he's said that this is basically a story about 7 happy-go-lucky teenagers being starkly confronted with the wartime trauma their parents' generation endured.
Yeah, sounds about
Um,
right.
yeah, he apparently was born and grew up in, Hiroshima. He said that he lost all of his close friends when the bomb was dropped. So every
Wow.
single friend, yeah,
Wow.
and, he basically was putting a piece of himself in Gorgeous to represent what he went through, and
Wow.
yeah, it's very sad. Um,
It is.
there was so many fun elements to this, but underneath it all, it's basically a story about what the Japanese people went through during the war and the after effects of it all, and it's very interesting. So, the script was partly inspired by Obayashi's then 12-year-old daughter, Shigumi.
Which makes
Um,
so much sense. It makes
yeah,
so much sense when you think about it like that, and you're like, "Oh, a lot of those big memorable scenes were inspired by his daughter and things that his daughter thought of." And I'm like, that has a childlike quality to a lot of the movie that like when you can't, I don't know, maybe I didn't pick it up until I had that piece of information where I'm like, oh, that's it. There's like a really childlike nature to some of this. That totally makes sense.
yeah,
So cool.
and she told him of fears that she actually had. She was afraid that a mirror that she used would eat
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
So interesting.
I love that.
Um This I thought was fun. None of the 7 young actresses who portray the group of friends who visit the house, none of them were trained actresses whatsoever.
I read
Um,
that too, and I kind of love it.
it
There's
makes sense.
And I love all the girls. I think that the girls are amazing. Again, like I
Yeah,
feel like this movie doesn't get as much shine as it should because it's a foreign film, so not as many people are like prepared to do that. Like I just think that is what it comes down to in a lot of ways. But I love
yeah.
the girls. I love the girls' performances.
They
Um
have great chemistry. You believe that every single one was friends in real life,
totally.
especially Fantasy and Gorgeous.
Oh yeah. No, I bought it, and I
And
loved their moments together when it's just like a couple of them or when they're all talking, like they're friends for sure. I believe it.
oh, yeah. Yeah, apparently they were just models that he met when he was working in advertising. The
Yeah.
only actual veteran was Auntie,
Yeah.
Yoko.
Sorry,
I'm really
guys.
bad at Asian
You're
names, so
amazing.
sorry. I'm just
Me
gonna call her
too.
Yoko.
Yes.
Yoko. Yoko, who played Auntie, was the only veteran actress, and she was incredible.
I honestly like I mean, I would be okay with some kind of weird spin-off story about Auntie and just like learning more about her if it was done in the same kind of like experimental psychedelic kind of spirit. But I
Yeah.
just want more Auntie because she's like menacing in a way, but like delightful and like yeah, just the
She's
moments where
got a
you as the
playful side.
oh yeah, she does. Like the scene where she's messing with fantasy is just like my absolute fave. That's when you know for sure you're like, okay, I mean, we knew it when she started talking about how tasty Mac looked, that she's like, she's pretty dangerous, but I like
Uh,
freaking love her.
Between the time the project was given the green light by Toho Studios and when the film was actually completed, Obayashi produced several successful projects based on the story. He turned it into a successfully commercially successful manga and a radio drama
I read
in the
that.
70s,
I
in the
know.
70s.
I read that, and
And
man, I would like to get my hands on both, like, so bad.
right? Yeah. He also, spun off a number of product tie-ins before the film was ever released. I need to know what they are.
I know.
Um, he did this because he wasn't, Toho Studios' first choice to direct the project, so he wanted to get it out there before anybody could make his story in with their vision, basically. He was afraid that the story he wanted to tell wouldn't get out there. So I think that's
Sure.
really cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But apparently no one else wanted to do the project, so and because all the little things that he was doing to promote the movie were so successful, the studio was like, "Fine."
They're like, "Okay, you know what? You earned it. Like, you're persistent, dude, so we'll throw you a bone here. You can
Pretty
make house."
impressive.
I know, I'm
Yeah.
amazed.
And as we mentioned earlier, this film was commissioned by Toho Studios because they wanted to recreate the success of Jaws.
Jaws, house, of course, we're seeing a clear we're clearly seeing that. I was like, is
Yeah,
it because so instead of the shark, we have a house that, like, kinda destroys people?
kind of. They wanted it to be gory, they wanted it to be
Yeah.
violent, and they just wanted something scary. So, houses.
You know what?
I
I like to think of it as like, maybe they went maybe he the director went with, you know what? Jaws was kind of a revolutionary movie. Maybe I'll just try to make a revolutionary movie, something that's in the spirit of the impact that Jaws had cuz
yeah.
it's like this movie is graphic in some ways, but it's not like gory per se, but it is gory, but it's not. I
It's
don't
like
know.
the idea of it is more gory if you think of it
Yes.
like, these are young girls, they're under 16 at least.
Oh,
Like, there's
yeah.
no way there's no way they're older than that because their uniforms imply that they are not in high school.
Yes.
So
They're
and
kids.
they're definitely children. So the idea of them being killed in such graphic manners, and also you're visiting a relative. She loves her mom. She's very close with her mom. So this is the closest she can get to her mom without being with her mom.
Yep.
And she should be safe, and it's not safe. The water is supposed to be safe in Jaws. It's not safe. That's the
Yeah.
closest I can get to that.
Yeah. I'll take it though, you know what I mean? I'm like, "Sure, if that's what it took to make this movie come into being, fine." Because I
Yeah,
love
it's
it,
just so
man.
funny, so funny that
I know.
Jaws, they're like, "We need to do something right now."
I know. This is what we got.
Jaws has inspired many a film, so I'll
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah, it has. Who would have thought that it inspired this one? But it did, folks. It did.
Yeah, so much fun. Jamie, what would you rate this movie?
Okay, guys, I swear I don't just give tens, but
Oh my god.
we've talked about movies that are my favorites, and this is a 10 for me too. I'm sorry, guys. I love what I love. This one's a 10 for me because it's so unusual. I think it's such a special movie. I mean, Criterion, released this one too, and that typically says something about a film's legacy, about its importance in film history. I just think it's special. It's unlike anything you'll ever see. Um from the way that it was actually constructed and like edited and like the way that they made some of these effects happen, their use of the camera, the characters, like the lines, like the visuals. It's all just an incredible movie, and It's not for everybody, like I said, it's bonkers, but I think everybody should at least watch it once. You'll have fun. I mean, there are points in this movie that I laugh out loud, like, every
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Like, this movie is, like, legitly funny too, and you connect to the characters. Yeah, it's an experience.
Yeah,
What
definitely.
about you?
It's really hard for me because I'm kinda torn. I normally don't like a lot of I don't like a lot of this kind of humor with my horror movies. Like, if it's going to be a horror comedy, I want it to be just horror comedy, you know?
Yeah.
But this one, because it's a foreign film, it's a little bit different, in a good way, and, the culture is very different over there.
Yeah.
I think you need the humor to, counteract with what's going on because it's very heavy stuff,
Yeah.
and, yeah, so I'm gonna say it's an 8
It's
because
good.
I think, I love this movie very much. I think the stuff with the teacher is very, it kinda pulls you out a little bit because it doesn't it's just ridiculous, like, they have this whole elaborate thing to with a bucket on his ass to as an excuse so the girls don't have to go or something. I can't even it's so absurd,
I know.
and I don't even know how they end up getting a hold of him to
Oh,
get him to come out, and I would have liked something with that, but um, I think it's an 8. I think it has a lot of historical significance, a lot of cultural significance, and it did a lot for horror and a lot of filmmaking in general. Like, there's so many movies since this that have tried to copy it and tried to take little things and to honor it and stuff like that. So it's just such a great movie. But it's gonna be an 8 because there's a few things that kind of pull me out of it a little bit.
it's a good score. And like again, I do think that like it's just such a cool experience to watch. Now the version that you watched, was it dubbed or was it subtitled?
It was subtitled. I've never seen the dubbed version.
I was gonna say I don't think that there is a dubbed version. I wanted to check with you to see if you had heard if there was, because I think the only way that I've ever seen this movie was subtitled. I don't
Yeah, and
know if there's a
it's in
dubbed
like a
version.
yeah, it's like in a 4.3 format too, so, like, I
Mhm.
can't find anything. It's sad that Criterion wasn't able to restore it in some way, but,
Yeah.
it's only in a very small aspect ratio,
I know.
and it's such a shame because it's such a beautiful movie, the great cinematography and everything, but yeah, everything is great about this. We didn't even talk about it, but the score in the movie is so good.
The score is
That's a whole whole
really
'nother thing.
cool.
Yeah,
I
so
just have to
good.
quick shout out, there is some funky ass bass that shows up in this movie, like, multiple times, and, like, I, like, love some funky ass bass, and it gets
Same.
funky. I was like, "Oh, hey."
Yeah,
So good.
so much fun. Yeah, definitely check it out. It is something you have to see. It is if you love foreign horror, if you love Asian horror, this is a must watch.
I feel like into psychedelic films too. Yeah, when I think of psychedelic horror, this is the first one that comes to mind. It's just like a great example of it. So if that's your steez and you like a cool like psychedelic visual experience, psychedelic kind of mind experience, definitely check out House 1977.
If you are one of those people that likes A24, check this out.
you know.
This is right up your alley, you freaks.
yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully, we are planning on hopefully trying to do Halloween next week with Ethan. If not, we will surprise you guys next week. So, with that, I'm Nina,
I'm Jamie.
and this is Bloody Essentials. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.